300ZX was an incredible car during its day, packed with a lot of tech-heavy features that put it ahead of its time. Even by today's standards, it's a great car, but unfortunately, it was because of all those early 90s gadgets that gave the Fairlady Z a mixed reputation. It's called character, and it's what makes the 300ZX one of the greats. So today, we're going to look at some of those tech-heavy character features slash flaws, starting with its infamous twin-turbo engine. Then we're going to move on to its four-wheel steering, and then we're going to finish up with its surprisingly sophisticated, iconic headlights that one Italian supercar builder borrowed for their own car. Let's get after it. I want to thank our sponsor for this week's episode of Bumper to Bumper Raycon earbuds. Now, I've had my set of Raycons for a few months now, and they are the only earbuds I use. Seriously, these things are great. They fit good, the battery lasts forever, their sound quality is amazing, and what's even better, they start off at about half the price of those other premium earbuds. Now, times are crazy right now. You're in close quarters with your loud-ass family members. Zip it, Catherine! I'm trying to sell some earbuds! Anyways, you can just take them out, pop them in, and they just drown them out. I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything. I can't hear Catherine screaming at me. Now, their everyday E25 earbuds are the best model yet. They got 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice noise isolating fit. It also comes in some cool new colors. Go to buyraycon.com/bumper or click the link in the description below to get 15% off your order. Thank you guys for supporting the companies that support us here at Donut. We love you very much. Now, for any non-300ZX fanboys or fangirls out there, there are two versions of the 300ZX. The 1983 to 1989 model, which is called the Z31, and from 1990 to 2000, which is called the Z32. And that is the one we're going to be talking about today. And the first thing I want to talk about with the Z32 is the motor, the VG30DETT. If your brain goes numb when you see or hear engine model numbers like that, join the club. I've always been one to kind of glaze over those engine model numbers, but it is surprisingly insightful when you break down what all those letters and numbers mean. So first off, the VG is the engine code that Nissan used for their series of V6 motors. Did they name it VG because G is the closest letter to resemble a 6? Sure, let's go with that. Let's start the conspiracy. Next is the number 30, and that number represents the engine's displacement of 3.0 liters. Now, engine displacement is just the total swept volume of all the cylinders. It tells you how much air can be pumped through the engine, and we can calculate that swept volume as long as we have the bore, which is the diameter of the cylinder. That's this measurement. As long as we have the stroke, the distance at which the piston travels, and the total number of cylinders. Now, displacement is usually listed in liters like it is here with the 300ZX. Sometimes displayed as cubic centimeters, which is used in motorcycles, or cubic inches if it's an American muscle car. Next is the D, which stands for dual overhead cams, meaning one cam is used to operate the exhaust valves and the other is used to operate the intake valves. And because this is a V6, there's actually 4 total camshafts in this motor, making it a quad cam. We're going to get to that in a second, so hold tight. Now, the E stands for electronic fuel ejection, and finally, the TT stands for twin turbo #boost creeps. We started a game when we were filming our series High Low. If you haven't seen it, after you watch this, go check it out, and then go to donutmedia.com and get your own Boost Creeps t-shirts. They're freaking cool. So now that we know what this engine is, one of the features that made it such a unique motor was called NVTC, or Nissan Variable Timing Control. Now, before I can even explain what variable timing control is, we need to 1, explain the basics of a 4-stroke engine, and 2, how timing is controlled in an engine without VTC. It'll help us appreciate what VTC does. Now, a quick way I like to remember the order of operations in a 4-stroke motor is SSBB. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. It's the sexiest way to remember it, and if you can remember that, you'll never forget how a 4-stroke engine works. Now, if we start with the piston at top dead center, or at the highest point in the cylinder, as it moves down, it sucks air into the cylinder through the intake valve above. And the piston then travels back up to squeeze all that air. Fuel gets squirted in, and that compressed air fuel mixture is then sparked, and bang, a power stroke pushes the piston back down. Now in the final stroke, we have to get rid of all that exhaust gas we just made by igniting that fuel and air, and the piston begins to travel back up to the top of the cylinder where it blows all that gas out the exhaust valve, and the process starts all over again. So when we talk about timing, we're talking about when those intake and exhaust valves open and close. So how is that achieved? That is the job of the camshaft. So the camshaft has lobes at various spots along the length of it, and as the cam rotates, so do those lobes. And those lobes then push against the valve to open them up. Now the location and the profile or shape of those lobes on the cam, they control 3 things in regards to the valves. They control the timing, that's when the valves get open. They control the duration, which is how long the valve stays open. And they control the amount of lift, or how far the valve gets lifted off its seat. By changing the shape of those lobes or their position on the camshaft, we can alter how much air the piston pulls into the cylinder and when. And if we go back to our favorite donut equation of more air plus more fuel equals more power, we can increase the amount of power we make by allowing the piston to draw in more air through the intake valve. Now, of those 3 variables, we're going to discuss the timing of the valves. See, when those valves open and close is extremely important. It can affect the efficiency of your engine. It can affect the amount of power it makes. And at a very, very basic fundamental level, it even determines if your motor will even run or not. Now, in most engines, the timing on when the intake and exhaust valves open is consistent throughout the entire rev range of your engine. And that is not always a good thing. For instance, when your engine is at idle, you don't need a ton of air going into the cylinders. It's not necessary, right? You're just sitting there idling. But when you're ripping down the track and wringing out the motor, you want as much air in as fast as possible. So cam design is basically a compromise between those two. But what Nissan did with VTC is develop a way to get the best of both worlds. So how did they do it? Now in a standard engine, the camshaft has a fixed gear on the end of it. Like I mentioned before, that's the part that a belt or chain hooks up to, which is driven by the crank. The engineers over at Nissan did something very clever with that gear. Instead of using a solid gear, they designed a multi-piece gear with a couple basic components. Now, you have the main gear, which the timing belt mates up to. And on the inside of this gear housing is a cam phaser that's directly connected to the camshaft. And that cam phaser, that is the part that allows for variable timing. That entire setup has passages for oil to go through it, and it's pressurized oil that makes Nissan's VTC system work. Now, when VTC is activated, a solenoid valve mounted on the back of the head presses on a check valve at the rear of the cam. And normally, oil can flow through here, but now that the solenoid is blocking that flow of oil, this forces oil into the cam gear, which then pushes the cam phaser. And remember, the camshaft is directly connected to the cam phaser. So when this happens, it causes the camshaft to rotate just a few degrees, effectively advancing the timing of the intake valves. And when I say advance, I mean the intake valves open up sooner. So at the tail end of our blow stroke, right, while the exhaust gases are being pushed out, the intake valve is getting a head start by opening it up just a smidgen sooner. So why would you want that, right? What does it mean? It means you get improved low end power and throttle response, which is great. That load is just a calculation done by the ECU. So it takes all of that data from the crank angle sensor, from the engine temperature sensor, from the throttle sensor, and from the neutral switch. My point being is that all of this is pretty sophisticated stuff, especially when it was developed in the late 80s. I mean, that is pretty incredible. And on the flip side, again, this was done in the late 80s, meaning if you have a 300ZX, you better have a lot of time and patience to troubleshoot any problems that may arise if any of those systems fail. Obviously, it's not impossible. Cars today are more digital than analog, but Finding parts or people to know how to work on your 30-year-old Z are getting harder and harder to find. But hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll build some appreciation for the Z and you'll go out and you'll buy one. You'll keep all that knowledge alive. Which, by the way, if you have a 300ZX, put a comment down in the video below. Tell me, is it as much of a pain in the butt to work on, or do you still love it for all its character that it has? Now, aside from this neat little trick to optimize timing, the main thing that gets people all charged up about the 300ZX is its twin turbo setup. Z uses twin Garrett T25 turbos, putting out 9.5 pounds of boost. That made the Z good for 300 horsepower and 283 foot-pounds of torque, getting it to the end of the quarter in 13.7 seconds. It topped out at 155 miles per hour, but that was electronically limited. So if you take that off, you go faster. Don't do it though. Don't do it if you want. What do I care? To give you an idea how good that motor was in this car, it made Car and Driver's top 10 list for 7 years in a row. And they compared this car in the magazines to everything. The C4 beat out the RX-7, it beat out the 911 even. It beat out the 3000 GT VR4. Any import car that was tested against the 300ZX, the ZX came out on top. It's a great car. Now the next cool tech feature on the 300ZX that I want to talk about is Nissan's four-wheel steering called Super HICAS. It's not called HICAS, it's called HICAS. It's like HICAS, and it stands for High Capacity Actively Controlled Steering, and it is Nissan's way of steering the rear wheels. Now, you may have heard of this before. Nissan used it in their R31 Skyline, but it came standard on all the twin turbo models of the Z32. Now, maybe the most dramatic example of rear wheel steering is in the monster truck world. We did a bumper to bumper on Gravedigger, and James talked about it then. Go watch that after you finish this. Now, they use rear wheel steering so those big trucks can make tight turns in small arenas like this. Now, the four-wheel steering on the 300ZX is quite different in how it works, as well as why Nissan installed it in the first place. So first off, why would you even need four-wheel steering? Well, at low speeds, if you have the ability to turn the rear wheels in the opposite direction of the front wheels, you effectively decrease the turning radius of the car. Hence why monster trucks use it. Now, for the 300ZX, this isn't very helpful as the system is inactive under 30 miles an hour. So what is the reason the Z uses it? Well, they use it in high speed situations. So the HICAS system on the 300ZX only steers the rear wheels just a few degrees. Your front wheels, on the other hand, they can turn up to 50 degrees. So it may sound like a few degrees in the rear is pretty insignificant, but it actually helps out quite a bit. When you turn all four wheels in the same direction, going around a corner, for instance, it improves high-speed stability. And with all four wheels turning the same way, you're less likely to have the rear end kind of kick out. Also, at high speeds, your front wheels aren't rotated as much. You're not really doing a lot of this when you're going fast. So how does it work? Well, the Z uses the super version of the HICAS system. The super version switched from hydraulic to electronically controlled system using an electric motor. The ECU gets information from a few different sensors. It looks at the speed of the car, the steering angle, and the speed at which the steering wheel is being turned. So it'll detect this versus this. From this information, it works out how much steering input to apply to the rear wheels. It sends a signal to that electric motor. Now the system can also monitor your intentions for a corner. It can read your mind. So using data from all those sensors I mentioned before, this is then looked up against a table of pre-programmed values that tells the ECU how far to move the back wheels. This is continuously monitored throughout the entire turn. And all of this happens in a fraction of a second, by the way. And all of this happened in the 90s. This isn't Tesla we're talking about. We're talking about Nissan. In the 90s. Nissan, what happened to you? Where'd you go? Now let's talk about the front of the car. So to achieve the iconic front end of the 300ZX, they had to figure out a way to produce an entirely new headlight design. Looking at a 300ZX headlight today and you think, no big deal. But back in 1990, designing a headlight with such a sleek profile was a challenge. Generally speaking, a lot of the times the design process of a new car starts out with form over function. And as the build begins, designers go back and forth with engineers and the two work out some sort of compromise so that it keeps true to the designer's vision, but it still falls within the limits of what can actually be built by the engineers. In the case of the 300ZX, the looks were a main driving force behind some of the technology incorporated into the car. Now, when the designer Toshio Yamashita sketched out the car, he wanted to make it look sleek but still aggressive. He even traveled to the US to figure out what people loved about the previous Zs and why they were such a success in the States. American cars at the time were getting rounder and more aerodynamic. So he designed a smooth-edged Nissan, and in his design, he shaped the headlights so they made it up with the hood and the fenders clean and flush. And the angle of the headlights was 60 degrees. And at the time, if you wanted to maintain that angle, the only way you could accomplish that was the use of pop-up headlights. But at the time, we were getting away from pop-up headlights. So when he brought his design to the engineers, they were like, we can't really do that. We can make them like 45 degrees, is that good? And Yamashita was like, no, no, no. Nissan engineers nicknamed him Mr. Yada Shita because Yada loosely translates to no, no, no in Japanese. You see, Yamashita was seeking perfection and he wasn't going to allow a bunch of whiny engineers to stop him. And as an engineer myself, I can call us whiny. So he went out and he found very small projectors and gave them to the engineering team to use. Now, projector headlights had been around before they were put on the Z, but to maintain that low profile of the Z, remember it was 60 degrees. They had to have smaller projectors and lamps and bulbs and all that stuff so they can maintain that sleek profile. Now, the lights were a huge success, so much so that Lamborghini used them in their Diablo. During the later years of the Diablo's production, they went away from pop-up headlights, and instead of designing, manufacturing, getting all the regulatory tests done on their own headlight, Lamborghini used, under license, the headlight of the Nissan 300ZX. Fun little fact, Lamborghini actually tried to hide the fact that they used Nissan's headlights by covering the top portion with a strip of carbon fiber. But if you have a Diablo, pop off that carbon fiber piece and you'll see the Nissan logo right there. That's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you didn't know, Donut has a show coming out every day of the week now. We have a new Versus show. We have the D-List. We got Money Pit with Zach Jobe, who's just a beauty. Follow Donut at Donut Media. Click that like button, click the subscribe, hit the notification button. Do you have a 300ZX? Let me know about it. Put a comment down below. Hit me up on Instagram. Show me some pictures at Jeremiah Burton. I love that car. Is it as much of a pain in the butt to work on as I hear it is? I don't know. I don't have one, but you can tell me. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
What's going on, guys? Jeremy Miller from Springfield, Massachusetts, also with the Zebras Drift team. I have here my two Nissan 300ZXs.
Hey guys, my name is Bethany Putney, and today I will be showing you my 1990 Nissan 300ZX Twin Turbo.
How you doing, Donut Media? My name is Brent, and this is Blaster Z.
I'm a little biased, but I think this is a timeless design.
What's up, James, Nolan, and all the other guys at Donut Media? My name's Kevin from New Jersey. This is my 1990 Nissan 300ZX.
Hi, my name is Long, and I'm from El Monte, California. Here's my 1991 300ZX slick top with a twin turbo conversion.
Oh, I got something. Hold on. Oh, dude, I got something for you, dude. Look what I got. Got a little calculator. So while Nissan engineers in the 90s were programming all this cool technology into the 300Z, you know what I was doing in the 90s? Texas Instrument. Where my TI-89 fans at? I was doing this. 8008S. Freaking Dude, so dumb. So dumb. I am embarrassed that I just did that. And I know you're gonna use it, and I wish I didn't, but whatever. All right, we good?